Hello everyone and welcome to the second episode of Almost Daily LCK Show, the show that airs almost daily and is about LCK. So first of all guys, I'm very thankful for the comments that you left in the comments section and a lot of feedback on Twitter, on Facebook, on Discord. I really appreciate that, and well, I think I improved a bit at least already, because I'm not holding a mic anymore. Mic is standing still, and I think the audio is a bit better, and also there is no wardrobe background anymore, so it doesn't look like wardrobe. And the last thing, this time I will have some notes in front of me, so I will go through some bullet points so I don't forget about anything important. And yeah, we will be talking today about two banger series, GenG versus Damwon Kia and DRX versus Nongshim. So let's start with Damwon Kia versus GenG, even though it wasn't actually in the chronological order, because GenG versus Damwon Kia was the second series of the day, but well, I don't care, because it was amazing and it was very important, and I will tell you why, guys. GenG was on the 16 games win streak this day before the series versus Damwon Kia, which means that if they win another game versus Damwon Kia, they will have obviously 17 games win streak, and that will be the record, like they will be tied with the record of SKT from 2015. And if they win that series 2-0, they will have 18 games win streak. That will mean that they will break that record. So it was actually a huge achievement. But unfortunately, spoiler alert, they didn't do that. They tied with the record. So they won the first game of best of 3, but they didn't win the second one. So unlucky, and I was actually pretty upset about it, because I thought that GenG will smash Damwon Kia. Like it would be like clean 0-2 for, or obviously 2-0 for GenG, but it wasn't. And let's, take a dive into that series and let's figure out why. So the first game was actually a pretty clean game from GenG. Like they were just stomping, and guys, I'm standing behind the title of the previous episode. I think that GenG are macro gods at that point in the LCK League. I think they have the best macro of all the teams, and they have huge momentum. I don't think that they will drop a series till the playoffs. Obviously, they already played the rematch versus T1, so there is like no real rival right now. So let's see how it unfolds in the playoffs, but right now I think they will just end up with the 17-1 result. The draft was also pretty good. Like Damwon Kia didn't have like a very good engage into GenG's team, so I think GenG's composition was overall very easy to play. And to be honest, they snowballed early game. They took the first Herald. Peanut got the solo kill on Nuguri, which was actually quite interesting, because just Nuguri was just recalling in the brush. Wukong went there and solo killed him, because Nuguri was playing Sejuani without flash. He had the ignite, and yeah, they just put the Herald. They took the first blood turret, and well, it was very important how they took the first blood turret on the mid lane, because GenG just left the Sivir alone on the bot lane. Sivir is a relatively safe pick by herself, and also Damwon Kia had Zeri Lulu lane, so they couldn't really threaten Sivir. They couldn't really dive her or anything like that. So Legends just rotated into mid lane, and they put a lot of emphasis on securing the tier 1 turret on the mid lane, and they did that. So GenG is amazing when it comes to understanding their comps and those nuances of the games. So they executed that very well, and they just grabbed the tier 1 turret, so it was very good. However, I want to highlight that this game and in the third game of the series, Doran actually made the same mistake. He didn't play the cross map well because all of his team was actually like putting resources into other side of the map, and all he needed to do was drop his turret, right? The turret was already pretty low. Damonkia was surrounding the turret. They wanted to secure it, they wanted that extra gold boost, and Doran for some reason decided to attempt to defend it, and he failed, and he gave his gold, obviously, like, because they killed him, and they also secured the gold from the turret. So that was pretty bad, and he repeated the same mistake in the game 3. And what was actually quite interesting is that even if they were like cross-mapping and trading the tier 1 turret for tier 1 turret, GenG always get the edge in the tempo, they always get the edge on the vision, they always get the edge on the upcoming objective. So it was really cool, clean, and they basically won every fight. They took Baron, they finished the game. It was really simple game. However, the game 2, and I want to remind you guys that they were one game from actually breaking the all-time record of LCK of the highest win streak. Obviously, we are talking about the games, not the series, right? Not the matches, you may say, because T1 had 18-0 record in the previous split, but we are talking only about the games here. The draft of GenG was actually pretty weird. Like, they had Lucian Nami lane, they had also scaling mid lane, which was Azir, and they had Renekton and Skarner. So, you know, usually when you pick Renekton, you want to play around it, right? Because you have such an easy setup for a gank, so you may say that it's like your strong side. And also you have Lucian Nami, so you want to snowball them as much as possible, because they are not the best when it comes to scaling, but they are super good when it comes to early skirmishes and snowball. However, Damonkia picked much better scaling because they had Karthus for Canyon. As I mentioned in the previous episode, Canyon was playing only utility junglers because they are in the meta right now, but he had Karthus, who is not very popular in the meta, but yeah, there it was, more carry pick, you know, like higher damage that he can put onto the enemy team. So that was actually very exciting for me. However, the composition was quite weird because you had some front to back champions, and you had Karthus, which is like typical front to back, but you also have like Camille, Amumu, Ari, so the champions that want to really go in very hard. However, yeah, it doesn't matter because technically Canyon can just flash into the fight and, you know, sacrifice himself, die, and just utilize the passive of Karthus. The matchup for Lucian Nami from Damonkia was Kalista and Amumu. And actually, Kalista and Amumu 2v2'd, killed Lucian Nami level 1. So it was the biggest disaster that could really happen. The biggest disaster when the Lucian Nami lane is put behind, especially considering the composition of GenG, it's a disaster. And Damonkia snowballed the early game perfectly. They were invading the enemy jungler, obviously the bottom side of the jungle. They were diving Lucian Nami, they took the Herald, they took the bottom turret without even putting the Herald. Then Damonkia swapped, they put their bot lane onto top lane, and they took another dive, yet another turret, but they kinda slowed the game down in the mid-game stages, and they lost the first Baron of the game. And that was the problem. Like, Damonkia poorly executed the fight, and I think they were poorly executing the control over the terrain when they were securing the objective, which was a big problem because GenG, apart from the fact that they are very good at macro game, they are actually well coordinated, they are coherent, and they are executing their fights pretty well when they have a good opening. Like, they were put very, very, very behind with the composition that is not scaling well, the composition that is reliant on snowballing. They didn't snowball whatsoever, but still they were able to look for a good opening. They found their peak, they found their opening, and then they took the Baron, and yeah, the game was actually pretty close. The gold gap, which was huge, suddenly shrinked. So actually that was really interesting. Damwon took the second Baron, they took the bot lane inhibitor, right? But then third Baron, they lost yet again. So really, really insane. They lost the third Baron of the game. So as I mentioned, GenG's composition was not scaling well, and yet they managed to actually find an opening and once again win a fight. So they took the Baron. But, you know, the ending of the game was something truly unusual, and that was so exciting. Damwon won the game, they won the fight, and they won the game only because one creep was alive, and that one creep, the range creep, was actually having 1 HP. So what happened is that the fight on the mid lane broke down, and as I mentioned, Damwon won it, but Doran was still alive, and he attempted to stop the wave on the mid lane. So obviously Damwon Kia cannot end the game, and they managed to sneak that 1 HP range creep, and then just Nuguri as Camille tanked everything. Dogdam was still alive, so they had like a huge damage output onto the turrets, and that's it. The record has not been broken yet, and unfortunately we will not see that record being broken this season, right? Because GenG already blew their chance. So that was pretty upsetting, and I thought that it would be a nice like cherry on top when it comes to that split for GenG so far. Like, they are so good, they are playing so well, really. It's amazing. I thought that T1 will be the best team, especially considering the spring split performance and 18-0 record, but no. GenG is actually on top right now, and I really doubt that they will just like drop. I think they have 99% chance of securing the first spot right now. So perfect, but quite unlucky. Game 3 was actually a bit less exciting. Like, the draft was much better from the side of GenG, and the problem is that I think Damwon Kia was in a trap after the draft. Like, they drafted Lucian, Nami themselves, but GenG picked Zeri, Lulu, so they cannot really abuse such lane. It's hard to abuse the Lulu lane by Lucian, Nami, right? So Damwon once again needed to snowball early, but they didn't really have tools for it. Kinda the same as GenG in the previous game, because they have Lucian, Nami, but they have Victor on mid lane, and the opponents have Ryze, so Ryze will always outroam Victor, right? Also, when it comes to skirmishes, GenG secured Poppy in jungle, and Damwon Kia has Viego, so Poppy can actually deny the go in ability from Viego, which makes 3v3 even harder. And on top of that, if that's not enough, GenG had GP, right? So every skirmish after level 6 is like, 3.5 versus 3 for GenG. And yeah, it was happening. Like, it was very hard to snowball, and actually I need to say that Lehens made a play. He flashed and Lulu R himself to knock up both Lucian and Nami. Lucian and Nami just died, and yeah, the snowball started for GenG actually, and Damwon Kia was actually lacking of any sorts of redemption for that game. Also, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, Doran blundered the cross-map play yet again. All he needed to do was just run away, just drop that turret, and acknowledge that your team is getting much more gold and value on the other side of the map. But, well, they didn't do that. And also, one more praise, if you want to prove that GenG are macro gods, in the mid game, they opened both mid and bot lane tier 2 turrets simultaneously without having a Baron buff. If that's not a proof, then I don't know what is. That was a pretty messy game in a sense that we had 6 Drakes and 2 Barons. But you know what, guys? I want to remind you that GenG had Zeri, and Zeri is crazy, and you know how Zeri games end, right? Ruler got pentakill recently, now he got just quadrakill. And even though the fights were actually pretty close, and I think GenG was messing up their positioning, Zeri just didn't miss position in one fight, and that was enough. She just got the quadrakill, and they just ran straight to the Nexus, That's it. That's the series. It's banger, especially that moment when that one creep was running with Nuguri and Dogdam. And that one creep basically took the chance of breaking that all-time record, took it away from GenG. Insane. I was so excited watching it. It was amazing. Really, it was amazing, and I will not forget about that play for a long time. Okay, so the first series of the game, it was DRX versus Nongshim, and actually there was something at stake in that game, because I mentioned in the previous episode that, in my opinion, Kwangdong Freaks have no chance of getting playoffs, which is actually not true. It was my subjective opinion, but technically they have, mathematically they have. So the only team that they can actually beat, I at least think they have the biggest chance, right, is DRX, which is currently on the occupying the 6th place. So DRX is one win ahead in comparison to Kwangdong Freaks. So every win matters for them. And Nongshim is actually 8th. And also Nongshim could actually do something to achieve playoffs if they win every single match up from that point, and DRX loses every single match. Nongshim can actually secure playoffs. So the chances were quite small, you may say, but there was still a glimpse of hope for Nongshim. So, well, the first game, DRX was looking much better. They were much more proactive in the early game. They were invading Vi's jungle because, Nongshim had Vi. And also, the breaking point of the game was Nongshim securing a first Drake when Nongshim's composition was much more scaling reliant in comparison to DRX's composition, because on DRX's side we had Kalista Amumu, and on Nongshim's side you have Aphelios Leona. So only considering that matchup, DRX is much stronger in the early game, right? You have also Sylas, you have also Viego, and you have those champions that actually have good damage early. So Nongshim actually had the tempo, and they wanted to utilize it by taking an objective, which is technically good, but DRX just ran to the Drake, and even though they had no chance to secure the Drake, they wanted to start a fight, and they started it, and they went 3-4-1, as I recall correctly. So that was actually very good, advantageous for DRX. And by the way, in this match, GenG was a giga chat. As that Sejuani, he was everywhere. He was, for example, rotating from top lane to mid, and they did like, you know, roam and jungle gank at the same time. And that was amazing. However, DRX, and I think this is the reason for them not being top team, like top 3 team or top 4 team, because the roster is looking very, very good. But the problem is that I will give you an example. GenG went bot lane to, you know, roam and maybe force something and snowball his bot lane even more. But at the same time, obviously, he is losing on top lane because Kana is pushing the wave. So he has like the limited window to make a play, and then he wants to back top lane. He used that limited window, he went back top lane. I think they didn't achieve much out of that play. He went back top lane and he grabbed the wave. In the same time, Kana was rotating to the Drake that was actually spawning, and even though it was obvious that GenG cannot join, he didn't have TP, he already roamed, he has a wave under his turret, DRX still contested that Drake. And they were just like 4v5, so they lost the fight. And because of those misunderstandings of the current situation on the map, I think that game was much closer than it should have been. Even though they made that mistake, they were actually quite dominant. They put Herald, the second Herald, to actually secure the first turret. And you know, guys, they made some questionable decisions, and actually the game was not looking like it's under their control. Like they were trolling on Drakes over and over the game, and actually this is the signature move for that series. One of the teams was constantly trolling on Drakes, and for some reason, they were always fighting for those Drakes, no matter what, no matter the number advantage or disadvantage. Doesn't matter if it's like second Drake for the team and the Drake result is 1-1 right now. No one cared. There is an objective and we need to fight. So they fought over and over again, and it was such a mess. Those games were just pure mess. And DRX made a great call. They secured Baron at minute 20, but in the end, it was constantly back and forth. But, and also I think that DRX composition was actually hard to play versus Nongshim composition, especially if we are put into the late game, because Nongshim was scaling pretty well. As I mentioned before, they had Aphelios and DRX had Kalista, right? And actually they didn't have a lot of range in their composition. I mean DRX, because they have Kalista, they have Sylas, they have Sejuani, they have Viego. They are almost all short range. So actually it was pretty hard, but you know what, guys? They were flanking each time. Zeka flanked twice and it was so perfect. Beryl flanked once and it was so perfect. Like with Zeka flanking, there was a fight around the Drake. Zeka flanked, they won. There was also another flank on the Baron. Zeka flanked, they won. On top of that, Zeka actually face tanked every single member of Nongshim team, and he still managed to kill 2 people. He died, but he managed to kill 2 people. So, that was a mess, but DRX won. Second game, actually, everything that could have gone wrong for DRX went wrong. Basically, they wanted to contest Herald, even though I think their composition was much worse when it comes to early skirmishes, and GenG was super low mana and he basically had mana only for the ultimate. So DRX has a composition. They have Sejuani, Viego, Ahri, Zeri and Leona. So technically you may argue that it's actually a good composition for the Herald, but not if your top laner has mana for only one ability. At the same time, if Nongshim play that fight correctly, they have Renekton, Talia, Ryze, Sivir, and Tahm-Kench, and they have so much like one shot, like burst, like CC, right? So if they manage to find a pick, I think they will win, and it happened. So Nongshim starts snowballing, but well, like DRX took the Herald, but they didn't even place it because Kingen took it and he didn't find an opening. So like the Herald didn't charge, they didn't take place. So it was even more tragic because they lost the fight and they didn't utilize the Herald. So really tragedy. And if you think that everything went wrong for DRX up to this point, Zeka misclicked his stopwatch while doing cracks. So yeah, pretty unlucky overall for them. And you know, as in game one, there were a lot of skirmishes over and over again, and basically the execution in teamfights was all that mattered. And I want to only talk about one teamfight in minute 32, where Nongshim played that really well, like rocks on the floor into knockup from Dread's Talia was very well played, and also Snowflower's Devour was on point, so he saved his AD carry. It was looking really well. But you know what? DRX had Zeri, and no one cares about perfect execution, about any plays. That champion is just bonkers. And I think, I don't know, Riot, delete the champion. Just do it. It's so unfair. And you know what, guys? If you think that this is a lot, the game was banger because Nongshim took the soul, but at the same time DRX just took Baron, right? So yeah, you know what, guys? You know how that game should have ended? Obviously, with Elder Flip. So we had Elder Flip past 40 minutes, and the Elder Flip was won by Nongshim. So they managed to finish the game, and really I feel just tired talking about it because I remember that game, I was watching it, it was exciting, and don't get me wrong, the game was banger. If you like to watch a lot of fights, a lot of messy fights, a lot of outplays, you know, both of the games in this series that I managed to talk about so far were perfect for you, like perfect for the viewer experience. But from the perspective of the like clean textbook League of Legends, it was really bad. And you know, like the teams, no matter what, contested every objective, every Drake, every Herald, like doesn't matter, like they didn't care about their composition and one is actually destined to do. So I think that's a big problem. And for DRX, because Nongshim is, spoiler, out of playoffs contention because like they just lost the third game of the series. But for DRX, I think if they don't fix the misunderstanding of the composition and like over aggression that was happening during that series, I think they have a really serious problem coming to the playoffs, and I think they will be quite an easy opponent to beat. And well, you know what, guys? If you think that game 3 was a bit different from previous games, you are wrong. Minute 2, Pyosik is invading Dread's jungle with Lee Sin, and he dies 1v1. So yeah, that's it. Also, what's funny is that Nongshim actually dove DRX's bot lane, having Aphelios with 0 mana and Yuumi as their bot lane, But they had also Viego and Ryze, and they just utilized Ryze's R to actually secure such a dive. But it was so funny. Like, this is the lane that should be dove, right, by the opponents, but it was completely flipped around in the game. So as I told you, everything in that series was pure insanity. And what DRX recognized correctly, that after that dive, it was around minute 8. Obviously, if you are diving around minute 8 and the dive is successful, that's pretty bad for the Dove team, because they are losing a lot of resources. But at the same time, Piosik obviously did a cross-map play and he took Herald, and DRX recognized properly that, okay, we died, but we can swap and we'll be ahead in the tempo, because right now our opponents want to milk the play that they made, right? They want to take the turret plates. So they did a swap and they actually funneled some gold. They basically put the Herald immediately and they funneled some gold into Deft, who was playing Jinx. And obviously Jinx is well known as a hyper carry. So on top of that, I want to tell you guys that with the composition of Nongshim, it's hard to reach Jinx. How can you do that? Like, Renekton, obviously, he needs a good flank to do that. Viego cannot go through Kragas, Lee Sin, Sylas, and on top of that, Jinx has Devour from Tahm so it's extremely hard. Ryze is a typical front-to-back champion that he doesn't want to go in. He wants enemies to go into him, and he just does pew pew pew, right? And Aphelios Yumi, obviously, not the best matchup to actually reach Jinx. So if only Deft positions himself correctly, he has free shooting into the opponent. And it actually happened. Like, after the bounce back from DRX, because they were getting some, like, Nongshim was getting pretty significant lead based on how they played early game, but DRX recognized that they bounced back, and they have Zeka on Sylas, who performed very well in game 1, and he also performed very well in game 3, and they were just looking for the skirmishes around him, like on the mid lane, then on the top lane. So it was really good to recognize that, yeah, we have strong Sylas, we have also Lee Sin, we have a lot of burst, one target early game damage, early and like mid game damage, right? So they recognized that, they were looking to play around it, and they utilized it very well. They were fighting for a long time on the third Drake, and you are guys seeing that on the screen right now. But ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, the game was, like going to the deeper state, to the late game state, to the mid game, end of the mid game, late game state, and Jinx had just free shooting, and Deft could have just killed everyone, because they couldn't reach him, no matter what they do. Like, even if Renekton finds a perfect flank, which he didn't, by the way, but even if he does, it's very hard, because Deft has flash, he has Devour from Tahm. They just cannot burst him. It's so hard. So eventually DRX outscaled, and they secured the win in the series, which is very important for them when it comes to playoffs. And to be honest, I want to say that Zeka on Sylas is a monster. I think you need to ban that champion from him, or obviously like make a insane counter strategy, but I think that he's very proficient with the champion, and you should just get rid of it. Like, why you want to make your life harder than it should be, right? So Zeka, kudos to you. In my opinion, you are the MVP of the series. And guys, that's it. It was a long run, and the series, both of the series were amazing. Like, for different viewers, I would say. Like the first series, DRX versus Nongshim, was just a total mess, and it was exciting to watch because there was a lot of action, you know. But the second series had some action and the crazy ending in the game 2. But game 1 and game 3 was pretty well controlled by GenG, and I think a lot of good teams and a lot of like players who are interested in macro can pick up a lot of knowledge from those games. So yeah, thank you guys for listening to the show, and I hope you leave a subscription, like and comment. See you in the next episode, and yeah, kisses.